Yeah, welcome everyone. It's been a while. There's the Kured Dev Meeting. Today is the 6th of July. And I should probably say which year. It's 2022 because it's been December since we did the last one. And first up is Alexei, who wanted to give us a demo.
All right, so let's jump straight in. Is everyone seeing my desktop? Perfect. So as you all can see, it's a very small kind bootstrapped Kubernetes node where I can do some magic. If I'm doing kubectl qrd and I'm saying maintenance mode, and then I'm giving a list of nodes separated by comma, kind worker 2, kind worker 3, kind worker 5. Then the config map, which is basically that central nervous system which JP was talking about, is being generated. And you can see it here, where some magic is also happening. And then we are actually seeing that the maintenance on this node was already triggered. And these kind of commands and magic, it can be done so far in two modes. One is reboot and another is maintenance. In reboot, it does the whole reboot as we know it. The maintenance does just the cordoning and the tainting and node annotation without drain. It can be implemented if you want that, if there is a need of more granular functionality, but so far it does just the annotation and the tainting and cordoning. Now, I wanted to also show you a very small and brief presentation of how does it work. I don't know why it froze. Technology is really okay. Now it works. So to make it very brief, I wanted just to show you how the thing that I've called in the from the CLI is working. So I created a very small Kured plugin. It's a bash script which is basically populating a config map, which I called Kured Brain. And that config map has actually two key value things. One is basically a string formatted object, and another one is just a string. And I've introduced a third Go routine in the CMD root, which does the only thing that it does. It checks if the node slice in this state 2 is populated. If yes, then it takes one element and populates this one. And the reboot or maintenance sentinel is checking if here node in process, if there is something. If there is something, then it checks in which mode should it run, and then when the job starts, it changes the name here, the value, the payload of this key in invoked. So basically, it has three states, right? It's whether empty, it's whether it has the node ID, and it has a node ID invoked. Yeah, it's a sort of a scheduler done by someone who doesn't read. What I wanted to show you more is about the pros of it. Obviously, there's because we have no more reading of the file system. It's because robot required was removed in this case, but now I'm thinking it's not such a good idea. We can discuss it later. Functionality specification potential, that's obvious, and that it can run from CLI and not go and trigger manually a reboot on each node. The maintenance mode, by the way, doesn't have anything significant inside the maintenance script so far. There is just a foobar thing. But I didn't want to do much more before I've heard feedback from you guys. Cons, obviously everybody got used to the old way things were working. The architecture got a little bit more complex because there is a third Go routine in the root CMD and logging. But now I'm thinking that the idea, my decision wasn't that good because you will see in the code, I've split it. The reboot as required. I wrote another function maintain as required and wrapped it into another function server node. And depending on which mode is it running, whether one function runs or the second one. And that's not such a good idea, because every time we don't keep the logging history. And second, I think that you guys would want to have still the var run reboot required thing, which I would think that we would need to, however, keep a monolith in that case and have, I don't know, rename it in reboot or maintain, or just maintain the node as required. Thanks to JP, who basically introduced me to the project and who literally, like in a kindergarten, took me by hand and showed me to the spots which could be improved. And yeah, that's basically it. If you're more curious, I also have a small plan for changes from Kured to Kured 2. And now it's time for feedback. Thanks.
Cool. Can I ask what was the original problem that you were trying to solve that Kured couldn't solve that caused you to go down this rabbit hole?
Well, it was our dialogue last time, as far as I recall, when you guys were discussing that it would be nice from Kubernetes API to do some orchestration, some maintenance orchestration on nodes. That was the first thing. And second was to trigger from the Kubernetes API to trigger the reboot. Like if you have 100 nodes, maybe do it from the Kubernetes API. So that was the motivation first. Yeah, that's basically, and the discussion, actually the discussion that we had regarding this central neural system of Kured, that was another point. And the third was actually my motivation to get a little more into the Kubernetes Go client, because I was pretty much not very familiar with it. So I've had some fun.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, my first thought is that this looks like a evolution, like a sort of different, more abstract project than Kured that does more things. I like assuming that we can make progress donating Kured to the CNCF. I think that it's going to be not as much up to us, the folks in this call, as it is now to say what is going to happen with Kured. So possibly Kured would want to evolve into something that is, because if you start introducing things like maintenance mode, then reboot just becomes like a subset of that. And so maintenance becomes more like the first class concept and reboot becomes a second class concept. It is like one of many possible maintenance operations. It could be like a reference example. You know, another reference example could be apt get upgrade or something like that. Like coordinate drain first, then apt do some type of operation on the node, which may or may not be safe if it's participating in the cluster. Does JP, do you have any thoughts, Daniel?
Well, first, I'm super honored to have my names recorded there. Yeah, I think that the reason why we discussed this the last times was also multiple issues that were raised into how can we have this feature included in Kured and replace this by multiple topics, and how can we improve the security of Kured. So improving the security can only come with a change of architecture, because right now we have what we have and it's working. But if we were to improve the security by changing what each of the processes do, well, we need to split basically and do a proper separation of duty, and then apply the least privileges to that. The thing is, right now the architecture does not allow that. So this could become an evolutionary move. But of course, what Alexei mentioned here is that there is pros and there is cons. And the big con is the change is completely the architecture. So the thing that we like, the fact that it's very simple, well, it needs to go away because it brings the extra features. And this is, for me, an important part to know and to work together, because it's not an easy black and white solution. We have a possible future with a very different architecture. It might be more complex, but at the same time, I bring flexibility. Would it still be QLD by definition? Something to be discussed. But at the same time, if we want to have at the opposite part of the balance, if we include new features in QLD by doing all the pet features that we want to include, the code of QLD will become larger and will become harder to maintain. So this is basically a trade-off, the discussion to have at some point. The question is, do we need to have it now? I'm not sure, but I think that this is a great example of what QLD could be. And I think it's great that it's recorded, because it shows that it's possible. So thank you there. That's my opinion.
Yes, certainly. It sounds like it's something that works right now that does more than what Kured does. I'm curious. I would just love to hear from the user community about how important the current sort of UX of Kured is to preserve going forward, because I think I would describe the current UX of Kured as being essentially an agent that runs on the node that does rebooting on behalf of kind of like the standard OS bar run reboot required. So it's in response to folks running Linux as Kubernetes nodes, several years back, and thinking like, okay, like especially folks who had written their own boutique rebooters, before Kubernetes, which was sensitive, like looking for var run reboot required. Imagine just like writing a Python program or something that ties into cron that regularly checks for var run reboot required, and then does some sort of application specific graceful shutdown and then reboots the node kind of thing. So this to me, the current Kured is an evolution of that with Kubernetes native support. So I would love to hear from the user community how integral that UX is for Kured. Like this, do we need to, is our job as Kured maintainers to essentially maintain that simple piece of functionality going forward? To the extent that we can improve security, we should do that. But basically, is our job going to be super boring when it comes to Kured going forward? And is something like this going to be a new project that's going to fulfill a larger set of problems? And because I'm not aware, I think Alexei, I was showing you like a weekend project I did for node maintenance that was essentially kind of like what Kured does. It like establishes a new maintenance Sentinel file standard and does something similar. I'm not aware of a standard project like Kured for node maintenance, so it certainly seems like it's an opportunity in the Kubernetes. Not that my awareness is authoritative. It could be that there are 3 projects, I just don't know about them. But Daniel, does any of this cause you to have any interesting responses?
It's also good that it's recorded, because I feel I need to take a look at this again. Like for me, it was very quick, and I feel I would need to understand it more. But I like what you said, Jack, and I in that it would be good to get more input on this to see. Even if we would think of it as a V1 and a V2 kind of thing, to see like, are we looking at solving the right problems? How easy will it be for people to transition or whatever? Like there's many questions involved, and right now I feel like we can't talk. Okay, we can't, it's a separate problem, but we can't speak well to our users yet to our audience. Like sometimes there's a little bit of chat in Slack, but that's basically all we've got. And I would hope that with QD becoming a sandbox project, it's going to be easier to address some kind of audience, but we can talk about that next. It's a separate project, separate talking point. But yeah, I'm also very glad, Alexei, that you started looking into this, because it was an issue that was discussed for a very long time. So I think any experimentation to see where we could take QD is great, because it is, like many of you said earlier, it has turned into a boring project. Sometimes boring is good, but that's the question. Like,
yeah, we really don't know. The issue queue is fairly quiet, and so
fairly stable. Yeah,
it is possible. One possible explanation is that people aren't using QD anymore, and because it's too simple and it doesn't solve enough problems. And so something like this might actually be what users want to get them back interested in the QD. Or another possibility might be that QD is so simple and so boring that nobody wants to deal with anything. They just want it to work like it does. Yeah, I think both possibilities could explain the sort of state of QD, the relatively quiet state of the world.
Yeah, it would be interesting to get some metrics on how many people are using it. I don't find the Docker polls to be like very helpful. Yeah, I think
the Helm chart points to Docker Hub, the canonical image.
Or is it
container images are hosted on Docker Hub?
We also push to GHCR. Yeah, we need to figure out.
Yeah, I'm not sure if those metrics are the relevant ones, and that will explain who will be using this. A CI can be definitely good user of this. No, I mean, I don't want to joke too much on this, but I think that what you all said makes sense to me. It's we need to know what our users are in need for, because there is no need to develop something really new if nobody needs it. But at the same time, if there are some people that need it or need some of the parts that come from the change of architecture, then we need to think about it. But I'm
super confident that people need a maintenance, that there's an opportunity. I'm super confident about that. My only hesitation is I would not want to. If QD is something that is as common as, like LS on Unix, that's a gross exaggeration. But the point is, if it is something that everybody relies on that's super simple, then that is a special thing, and we want to preserve that, because that rarely happens, where you produce a tool that does one thing well and everybody uses it. So if that's the case, then I think if I felt super confident about that, I would probably voice an opinion like, we don't want to evolve QD to do anything other than security patches, all the boring stuff, and kind of make that clear in the project. But I don't know that that is actually the case. I mean, there's so many different ways that folks are using Kubernetes clusters. Managed providers are running thousands and thousands of clusters. So the reason I say that is that you could argue that in say 2017 or whenever QD kind of became known as the tool for rebooting nodes, tools that dealt with nodes were much more valuable than in 2022, when like the single unit of node is less interesting. Folks may have implemented auto scaling things where nodes are truly cattle and they're recycled as quickly as possible. And so maybe people don't really want something like QD because they feel that that's a kind of anti-pattern in terms of the way they manage their clusters at scale. Like, they don't want to be bothered with like this perfectly nice curated node. That's like the wrong way to do it. The right way is to, as soon as something goes out of date with the node, get rid of it and bring a new node online with a new configuration, that kind of thing. So Anyways, yeah, we need to figure out a way to talk to the user community.
I'm really, really sorry, guys. I have to run. I have a
Okay, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Well,
Keep the recording. I will need to watch it. See you
yes,
guys.
Okay.
yes.
So let's. I have 7 minutes. Let's talk about the sandbox stuff. Daniel, thank you so much
Yes.
for chatting with your boss and getting that moving
Yeah.
forward. That's really great.
Yeah, I'm also very pleased. So Alexis, the CEO of Weaveworks, gave his go ahead, and we're in the queue now. I had looked at what the CNCF TOC was doing recently. So it looks like every 6 weeks they have like a sandbox meeting where they sort of catch up with a big queue of things that want to enter the sandbox. And the last time I think they went through like 12, 15, 16 applications or something. I would need to check like where in the queue we are and what to expect. But if not next meeting, I'm sure we would get there the one afterwards. And I also think like if they just Google QD and just check like how much it's used and how long it's been around, it should be a fair no-brainer in my book. And from there on, it should be easier for us to, request a Slack on the CNCF infrastructure, get mailing lists, get a website set up, like all of this stuff.
Yeah, the mailing list stuff would be really great. Just start being like, we're gonna spend the next 6 months defining what Kured is. Like, we're donating it to you. You tell us what you want it to be.
Yeah,
that'll be great.
And that's where I would also, because I mostly work as a community manager, I would really like to hand like all the engineering bits to you folks, and now I could make sure that we get all the infrastructure and tools we need, and then in the long run that we start thinking about like governance. How do we make decisions? Like all this stuff needs to be written up for a mature and bigger project. I would just hope that with also some of the publicity we get for entering the sandbox and it being like a vendor neutral project, that we attract more people who want to get involved. That's my big hope, and that's where I would like to put my efforts. I think I'm much better at that than writing code or trying to figure out build issues or or whatever else.
Do you need help?
I think not for now. So if I remember, the process for Flux back then was different. At some stage, there might be a bit of a conversation. I think once we're here, there's going to be the sandbox meeting. We should make sure we attend so we can answer questions. And if all goes well, there might be a couple of tickets we need to file, probably a press release we want to get out, but that's the extent of what I expect.
Is the timeline fall, do we think, or is it sooner than that, August?
So they had the last sandbox meeting 2 weeks ago or something. So in a month, there should be the next one. And depending on how quickly they zip through the queue. And for
it's just first in, first out, basically.
And for sandbox, the requirements are not crazy. And also because the code base is so small, like for example, the last time they checked for Flux, it was much more, where they checked like all the dependencies, the licenses, all that kind of stuff. And for us, that should be a lot more straightforward. Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm really excited about that, and I think it would also be good to get the meetings back on a regular schedule, so we can push some of these things forward. Yeah,
that's good news. Very good news.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And hopefully, I think that Kured Slack is largely super boring, but it's fairly easy to get a hold of folks. So
Yeah.
Let's just stay in touch ad hoc if you need someone to lean in and update a doc or send an email or whatever. I'll be around.
And for the meeting, I guess I'll just put something in 4 weeks. I'll just stick with the time. If we need to move it because people can't attend, we'll just be flexible.
Okay, cool. I mean, there may be a few days where I wouldn't be able to attend, but largely I should be able to attend. So
yeah, sweet. Yeah, I'm not sure if you have anything else you wanted to discuss or talk about. If we just did a release.
If Christian were here, I would say thanks for all the hard work. He's been doing most of the heavy lifting of just keeping things boring and stable.
Yes.
But which is super important. I mean, it's not necessarily fun work, but it's really important work.
Yeah, for real. For real. Yeah.
If I'm running 124 clusters, I want my Kured with it. And now we can have it. So
yeah, I think that the last time that anything broke during updating for newer Kubernetes release, it has been a while. That's good news.
And it's generally not our fault.
Well, it's delightful to see everybody. I got to go to my daily stand-up, which is, around dinner time now that I'm in Europe, but it's my only chance to say hi to folks.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, good to see you, Jean-Philippe, Daniel.
Yes.
See you online.
Take care,
Daniel,
everyone.
Staying for a second?
Yes, I'll just stop the recording. Bye, everyone.
Bye.